Nicolas Higgins. I'm a vet here in Sligo in Tireragh Veterinary Clinic. I qualified 8 years ago and I was working up the north for maybe 4 years, and I'm back here in Sligo around home the last 4 years.
So my name is Karl Clarke. I'm farming here in Screen in Sligo. Farming full time for the last 5 years. I suppose when I took over first, it was predominantly British Frisian herd, and now we're kind of looking more towards a high EBI black and white cow.
I suppose it's probably the variety. Every day is different. You wouldn't know when you wake up in the morning, you wouldn't know what you're doing or what the day might entail. You might have a plan of work lined out for yourself, and then some fella rings you with a cow calving or something inside in the clinic. You might have a bitch that needs a cesarean or anything. It's a variety. Every day is so different, and yeah, it's a great profession for just variety and never a dull moment, really.
The most rewarding aspect of farming is probably the variety of work. You know, you could be building a wall today, or you could be welding a gate tomorrow, you could be working with cows the next day. There's a lot of different aspects to it, and it's, you know, every day it's the same.
Three most important things for rearing healthy calves are probably, number one would be your colostrum. First feed a calf gets, general rule is 1, 2, 3, first milk from the cow within 2 hours of birth, and 3 litres if possible. The second would be hygiene. Hygiene is vitally important from everything from the environment, the shed, even the cows, the calves, and what some people often forget about is the operator, the farmer themselves. Everything that can be as clean as possible to reduce the pathogen or the pathogen load on the animals is a massive help. And then the third one would probably be routine. Baby calves love routine, so same feed, same time of the day, same concentration, whether it be milk or milk replacer. Just try and do the same things every day, because they love routine, and if you can get them into a good routine, you'll generally have good healthy calves. It's when the routine is broken or when there's ups and downs and changes every day, that's generally when the calves get sick.
The three most important aspects of calf rearing would be, I suppose, hygiene, routine, and I suppose keeping the calf as warm, cosy, dry and clean as you can. Keeping routine. Calves kind of seem to work best when you keep a good routine, and just that you're feeding the same day every day, and you're not neglecting them or anything like that. You just have to keep them in that routine. One
practical tip any farmer can use to rear healthy calves is, I suppose it's very specific to every farm. Look at your history or what has worked for you before, and maybe more importantly what hasn't worked. And if something hasn't worked before, try and implement something that can change it or not allow that problem to happen again. There's all different, 100 different ways of rearing calves, whether it be big groups, small groups, drinking milk teats, whole milk replacer. But find out what works for you, or when something isn't working properly, maybe try and patch over that hole or fix that problem, and don't allow it to happen again.
I suppose the most practical thing about calf rearing that I learned, that I wish I learned sooner, was that it doesn't get easier the further you get into your calving season. That I suppose the workload accumulates as you have more calves on the ground, you have more cows milking, you're trying to get them out to grass, moving fences, and you've got a lot more kind of irons in the fire when you're further into the calving season. So when you get to the halfway point, you're not thinking I'm halfway there, you're realistically probably a quarter of the way there.
Best piece of advice I got in work or life, I suppose a few years ago before I moved home, I was out with a fellow one day, and he said to me, you need to take the step. And I didn't really understand it at the time, I didn't really realise it, but yeah, if you keep doing the same thing all the time, don't be afraid to challenge yourself or take a step or take a risk, because we all learn a lot more from maybe taking a risk and succeeding or failure than doing the same thing all the time. So if you feel like you want to do something, whether it be in work, life, personal, it's just I suppose take the step and give it a go, and if you fail, you fail, and if you achieve, great. But yeah, don't be afraid of not taking the step, or don't be afraid of failure, because it probably takes failure to improve in any facet of life.
How do I stay motivated during challenging times? Well, I suppose the way I look at it is, if you're having a bad day, there's, you know, it's not forever. That tomorrow's probably a better day, and you know, there's always kind of positive outcomes around the corner. You know that, and everyone, you know, you might think you're isolated at this job, but there's a lot of people in the same boat, and you know, it's important to kind of touch base with other people in the industry and kind of see what they're at, and then you can kind of weigh up, you know, ways of dealing with problems as well. You know.
Wouldn't really be big into my books or TV, but I suppose around the Jeep every day, probably listen to a good few podcasts. Just, I wouldn't have any one in particular, just whatever you're into, whatever you're interested in. Kind of into farming and sport myself, so yeah, just find something you're interested in and passes the time in the Jeep or makes you help you switch off. I'd say just find something you're interested in and yeah, maybe you might learn something from it or just catch up on the week's sport.
The best piece of advice I've ever received in life and work would probably be that you can buy everything except for time. Time is important, that, you know, if you're getting help, to grab with both hands, don't turn it down, don't try and do everything yourself, you know, don't be a hero. It's just if you have the opportunity to get help, or if you have an opportunity to get a day off or a bit of time off to spend with your friends or family, whatever, you know, go for it.
Back to the calves, routine is vitally important, you know. If you're in a routine of having a coffee every morning or having your lunch at a certain time, or no, try and stick to the routine as much as possible, because no more than the calf, when you vary from your routine, you might be hungry, you might be cranky, you know, people are rarely too busy not to stick to a lot of the routine. I get at times that it can be difficult, but it's important too to take time for yourself. If you say, for example, you love a morning coffee, you're rarely that busy that you can't take that 3 or 4 minutes. You might think you're busy, but then maybe come 9, 10, 11 o'clock, you haven't had your coffee, and you know, you're no good to anyone then, because you haven't got your caffeine fix, or you know, just take time for whatever you deem important for yourself, and just take that time. Don't be running around, running and racing all the time. Just take the time for your own routine rather than trying to be busy for everyone else, maybe.
Well, off farm, I suppose the activities we enjoy doing is, you know, we're surrounded by mountains and sea here, so you could get out on the bike on a mountain for a couple of hours, or get out in the sea, get out in the kayak, go for a swim or walk or hike or whatever. You know, there's a lot of ways to just get away from the yard, get a bit of fresh air and focus your mind on other things.
Thoughts on the role of biological products such as precision microbes? I think they're really important, and they're probably game changing. You know, for too long in the past, people have been, something gets sick, give it antibiotics. That is sometimes kind of a 2 or 3-fold negative impact, because we all know in the world that antimicrobial resistance is becoming a problem. The pathogens are getting stronger and less susceptible to antibiotics, but also especially in calves or any neonates, if we're giving antibiotics to a neonate, antibiotic is by its nature going to kill bacteria, so you know, there's good and bad bacteria everywhere. So if we're going into an antibiotic, we're probably wiping out that good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria that we're trying to fight. And then your recovery times and everything are so much longer, because the calf, the lamb, the puppy, anyone, the bacteria has to reset. I think from what I've seen and from anecdotal evidence and things, I think it's a game changer generally, and anything that we can do, especially in the veterinary world or the animal health production side of things, to reduce antimicrobial usage is a game changer, really.
I think what people misunderstand about farming nowadays is the amount of kind of paperwork, legislation, and the amount of bureaucracy involved, and it's just, you know, you spend as much time doing paperwork as you do doing activities sometimes, and it's just it's getting harder and harder. But I think that's the same in every industry. I think everything is kind of getting a bit more complicated that way, and it's the same in farming. It's not exempt.
Funny moment from my veterinary career. It wasn't actually me, but it was a colleague. It was one of his first times out lambing a ewe, and I suppose he found out in hindsight that the farmer was a bit of a joker, but he was pulling out to a ewe lamb, and she'd been lambing quite a while, and there was a bit of a smell off the lambs, and they were clearly dead, but he pulled out the first lamb anyway, and the farmer said, "Geez, I don't know, I think we might get this fella going," and took him out of the stable, and sure enough, 2 minutes later he came back in, and he was like Lazarus, he'd come back to life. And same thing happened with the second lamb out, dead as a doornail. 2 minutes later, farmer said, "No, I'll go out and I'll resuscitate him and I'll get him going," and came back in, sure enough, with a second the second lamb back to life, and my friend was kind of scratching his head saying, "Geez, how did that happen?" But what he didn't realise was there's another yo lamb in the stable next door, and they just kind of swapped the lambs on him.
I think it's vital that you have a good, working relationship with your vet. That if you have an issue, just to ring him. He knows the farm, he'll know the setup. The longer he's your vet, the more he'll know the setup, your herd profile, what bulls you're using, if you're having calving difficulties, and condition of the cows, a lot of different aspects that kind of give him a broader picture of possible issues that might be avoidable down the line. I think that you have a vet that you can just call, ask a simple question. He can give you some solid advice. He knows your farm, he knows something that might be a simple solution that you're willing to try, that you're just, I think it's vital, and it's definitely one of the keys to success in a busy calving time.
Yeah, I think it's vitally important, and it makes life easier for everyone if there is a reasonably good relationship there, and that I suppose everyone is moving now more towards prevention to a certain degree rather than cure. And I know for us it's a lot easier to step in and maybe offer a few solutions early on calving season, or when you're starting to have problems. Don't wait until you've lost a calf or two, or there's a big panic and there's a load of animals sick. And a lot of the time it might be something simple like a phone call where we could suggest something slightly different to do, or especially farmers you're in your own farm a lot. You don't maybe see the small places where you're tripping up, or you could be making a small little mistake and it could be multiplying big time. So I think it's vital for any farmer-vet relationship to be good, and everyone to be honest with each other, and neither the farmer or the vet to be not critique each other, but everyone can always improve. And I think the day from a farmer or a vet that they think they can do it all on their own, or they know everything, is the day when you run into trouble.